Hey, it's David from quizhacker.net, and today I want to talk about another problem that limits people's scores. This one I see all too frequently with high achieving students. So yeah, this video is specifically aimed at that group. But before I get into the problem itself, I want to ask a couple of questions. So one, how many spots do you think are open every year in the Ivy League? Okay. And two, how many high schools do you think there are in the US? So the answer to the first question, at least for last year, is about 16,000 seats open each year in the Ivies. And how many high schools in the US? About 37,000. So let's assume that you're not just one of the top kids in your class. Let's assume you are the valedictorian. According to the numbers I just gave you, over 20,000 of you, 20,000 valedictorians will not have a spot in the Ivy League. Oh, you say, but I go to a private school. Okay, so how many private schools do you think of that 37,000, how many of them are private? The answer is about 10,000, actually a little more than 10,000. So let's assume that the year you apply to college, we're going to get really crazy here, put things in your favor, right? The year you apply to college, every single school in the Ivy League, they all get together and they decide they're going to ban public school students. They're only accepting private school students that year. Obviously, that would never happen. That would be a public relations disaster, probably an academic disaster too, honestly. But in any case, not going to happen. But even in that unrealistic, crazy scenario where you just basically won the lottery because you happen to attend a private school, how many kids from your school, on average, get to go to the Ivy League now? Well, about 1.5. Okay? So yeah, that's looking pretty grim, but unfortunately it's even worse than that. It's worse than I just suggested because I only included the number of high schools in the US. And as many of us are aware, the number of international applicants getting admitted to top schools in the US has been on the rise for quite some time. All right, so probably have made my point. It's really super hard to get into the Ivies, as if we didn't know that already, right? So what am I really driving at here? Well, the point I really want to make is that I deal with kids every day who do really well at their schools. Maybe they're one of the top students, maybe even at a fancy private school, or maybe they're even valedictorian material. A problem these high achieving students sometimes face is that they're used to doing well. They're used to being ranked among the best, and at least when it comes to test prep, they can tend to assume that that's where they're destined to remain, right? Up there. And unfortunately, the consequence of this kind of presumption, at least when it comes to test prep, is that the students can be resistant. Students who fall into this category can be resistant to at least two things, that are absolutely critical for achieving optimal gains, for doing your best on the ACT and the SAT. And those two things are, one, consistent daily practice, and two, a focus on tactics. So here's the problem with that. A lot of high achieving students unconsciously assume that the level of competition they face on the test is going to be basically like the competition they face at their high school. But that is absolutely not the case. On the ACT and the SAT, you are competing with kids just like yourself, not just from across the US, but from across the entire globe. And as I just pointed out, there is definitely not enough room for all of you. It's not even close. The reality, okay, I'm going to get kind of harsh here for a second. The reality is that this is absolutely a competition. Let's not pretend otherwise. When it comes to these tests, we're talking about a competition, and some of you will win and most of you are going to lose. And who do you think the winners are going to be? The kids who are smart and high achieving, but who kind of consider themselves above primitive things like daily practice and tactics, or the kids who are smart and high achieving, who set aside their pride and get to work on the nitty gritty. I don't think I need to tell you the answer to that question. We're all familiar with the fable of the tortoise and the hare. And basically what I'm saying, and I see this in my test practice or test prep practice on a daily basis, don't be the hare. Don't be that guy. Okay, so maybe, however, an important disclaimer here, I'm talking about winners and losers and using that horribly harsh language, maybe you've decided that you honestly don't care that much. Yes, you're a high achieving student, but it's just not that important for you to get into the Ivies or some other elite school. If so, that's absolutely fantastic. Please do not get me wrong. I am not suggesting that you are a loser if you don't go to an Ivy. In that case, I would be a loser too. That is not what I'm saying. If that's not for you and you know yourself and you know what you want and you're headed on a different, you're on a different path, fantastic. That's great. You can turn this video off now because what I'm saying doesn't apply to you. Or maybe you're, somebody who doesn't want to go to an Ivy, but still you care about getting into, you don't have your heart set on an Ivy, but you still care about going to a top tier school. So you're thinking, what he's saying isn't so applicable to me. Well, nope, you're wrong. Many of the top tier schools are just as selective or nearly as selective as the Ivies. For example, the school that I went to, UCLA, is regularly ranked as the toughest school to get into based on the number of applications versus the number of admissions. So please don't just think that because you're not shooting for the top of the top of the top that the competition is not going to be fierce. If you're shooting for a top tier school, the competition is absolutely going to be fierce. So yeah, sounds pretty grim, right? Look, my point here is absolutely not to freak you out or depress you or make you feel bad. The point I'm trying to make is that if you're hoping for, a top tier school, an Ivy or some elite school or some school near the top, if you really want a realistic shot at one of those schools, you're going to have to be humble in your approach to test prep. You're going to have to have that tortoise mentality, right? Do the practice, work the tactics, be disciplined, be focused, do the work, don't be fancy. If you adopt this attitude, it's very likely going to help you get the highest score you're capable of so that, in that case, even if you don't get into your dream school, you'll still, I'm sure, get into a very good school and be able to rest easy knowing you gave it the old college try. All right, that's all for today. I will see you next time.